everybody, I'm Brian Entin, filling in for Chris Cuomo tonight. It was a big day, opening statements in Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial. We've got the best legal minds tonight on how it went today, and they see it very differently, by the way. Plus Trump's former White House chief of staff on how he thinks the former president is holding up. I mean, he has to sit in that courtroom all day long, no cell phone, no nothing. What's he doing? Is he campaigning from the courtroom? Is it hurting him? Is it helping him? We're going to discuss it all. Then the case of the murdered moms in Oklahoma, it took another really creepy turn over the weekend that we didn't see coming. There's these new court docs, and they show that Grandma Tiffany confessed to the murders. Plus, was the judge the next target for the deadly group known as God's Misfits? We've got all the juicy new information tonight. And happy Passover, of course, to those observing. The backdrop to the Jewish holiday this year, it is chaos on college campuses, including Columbia University here in New York, where things have gotten really heated. It's so bad there that they moved all the classes remote today, basically tried to shut down the campus. I went to Columbia today. Flew into New York to fill in for Chris. I wanted to go there to see firsthand, is it really like what you see on TV? How bad is it? Wanted to explore both sides of the conflict. What I saw and what they told me there is something everybody needs to hear to better understand why our country has gotten to this point. We're going to have that a little later in the show. Plus, the star of Love on the Spectrum, her name is Kaylin Partlow. You probably know the show, huge Netflix show. She's going to be on with us tonight live. Did she finally find love? That's the big question everybody's asking. All my friends want to know the answer. We're going to ask her. That's coming up later. But let's start today with opening statements. They were made in Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial in New York City. The prosecution also called its first witness the former publisher of the National Enquirer. His name is David Pecker. And he claims that Trump tried to have the story of his affair with porn star Stormy Daniels killed. The term we've heard by now, we've all learned about it. It's called catch and kill. So was this a win for the prosecution today, or was it just more of the same? I want to bring in our all-star panel. We've got defense attorney Mark Geragos, attorney Misty Maris, and Trump's former acting White House chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. It's good to see you all. Misty, I want to start with you. Really, for the first time today, we had a chance to hear both sides lay out their arguments. And I guess I was just waiting for some new information. And it seemed, Misty, like the same buzzwords we've heard over and over again: election fraud, influencing the election. I didn't feel like there were really a lot of specifics in the openings. Misty, what did you think? I mean, were you expecting more meat on the bones?
So from the prosecution perspective, Brian, keep in mind, this case is about falsifying business records. And in order for this to be a felony, that has to be in furtherance of either covering up another crime or in furtherance of committing another crime. So the question is, from the prosecutors, what is the other crime? So they used this word election fraud, and they said that was this broad conspiracy to catch and kill these stories, and that this was done through illegal expenditures. So presumably that means there's going to be an argument that these were campaign finance violations. But there wasn't a lot of specificity in the opening about what this other crime is, that this falsification of business records was intended to cover up. And Brian, that intent, that piece of it, is critical to the prosecution's case. So I didn't see a lot of color on that point, which is very crucial for the prosecution to be successful and prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
What do you think, Mark? I mean, the defense spent a lot of time today pointing out that a lot of the stuff that the jury is going to hear, yes, it's negative, the NDAs, the other juicy stuff, but saying, look, this stuff isn't necessarily illegal. I mean, what did you think of the defense's opening, Mark?
Well, the defense, I think, has got a fair point here, because the part of what they are doing is they're prosecuting him under this theory, him being the former president, that if you believe them, that his intent was to cover up, to catch and kill, to use the expression, these negative stories about him so that the voters would not know it, going into the election. And the response to that is, well, obviously every president in the last 100 years, save maybe Jimmy Carter, has had some kind of a scandal or something they don't want out there. And that's number one. Number two is, was his intent to mislead the voters, or was his intent because he didn't want Melania to find out? And, they didn't really deal with that.
Yeah, how can they prove that the intent was election interference? I thought the same thing today. We can't watch it. There's no TV cameras. But as we were getting the quotes coming out, maybe he just didn't want Melania to know. Maybe he didn't want the world to know. Even if he wasn't running for president, Mark, he may have done the same thing, right?
Well, this is the point, I think, where the defense is going to go. They have not, I understand, have not cross-examined David Pecker yet. David Pecker was at National Enquirer, was a supervisory position. I think they're going to cross-examine him. They're going to say, was this something that he was doing prior to 2015, prior to 2014? If they can show instances where he was doing this prior to 2014, where he wasn't a candidate, where the inference is that he just didn't want negative stories, that completely undercuts, in a criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt, the idea that this interpretation is only for the election. If, part of the definition of reasonable doubt is two reasonable interpretations, one that points towards innocence, you must adopt that interpretation.
Mick, it's hard to imagine the former president just sitting in this courtroom all day long. He has to sit there, no cell phone. He's mentioned before that it's very, very cold. He can't talk. He's a guy who's used to being in control, and he's totally out of control in this situation. You knew the president very well. What do you think is going through his mind as he sits in court all day, Mick?
Oh, I think he hates it, Brian. He's not a sit, at the table for 8 or 10 hours kind of guy. He's a very hyperkinetic sort of personality. That being said, he understands a couple things. First of all, the jury is watching him at all times. And if he overreacts to something, they'll pay attention to that. If you've ever been in a trial, the jury actually watches the accused. They watch the parties very, very closely. And Trump will know that. But he also knows this. He also knows that at the end of every day, or at the end of every break, even when he goes out for lunch, he's getting free media time, free media attention. This is the lead story right now on our news coverage tonight, not whatever Joe Biden did tonight. And that's what Donald Trump is really, really good at. So while he hates doing it on a minute-by-minute, day-by-day basis, he understands this is a tremendous opportunity for him politically, and you've seen him take full political advantage of it from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's interesting, too, the fact that there are no cameras in the courtroom, Mick. It almost, makes when he comes out and addresses the media even more of a spectacle in a moment, because the media doesn't have video from the entire day. You've just got quotes coming out. So they really reuse the Trump sound bites over and over again. There's video of him right there walking out of court. So, that kind of plays in his favor, it seems.
It does. He recognizes that, look, either I can tell my story or someone else can tell my story for me. And my guess is if someone else is telling my story, they're not going to make me look very good. So Donald Trump is grasping onto these opportunities to spin his own, to deliver his own spin on what this trial is about. By the way, it is by far the weakest of the 4 criminal charges against him. Even Democrats tend to admit that. So he's going to use that to his full advantage. Again, he doesn't like being there, but as long as he's there, he's going to make the best use of it. Okay, so the first witness, Misty, Pecker, it's all about this, whether or not the story was killed. He only got to testify for about 30 minutes today. He's going to be on the stand all day tomorrow, we presume. You think this is a big part of the case, Misty? How important is his testimony? It seems pretty pivotal.
It's very important. And the reason is the jury really has to understand what this catch and kill scheme is. And in order to do so, David Pecker is going to lay that foundation, explain what happened. And also, this again goes to the issue of the prosecution having to prove that Donald Trump had an intent to squash these stories for the purposes of the election, which would violate election laws. That's really going to be the hurdle here, because the squashing of the stories on their own, signing an NDA, paying Stormy Daniels money, Those things are not illegal on their face. So the whole context surrounding this payment, when it was made, why it was made, which presumably is going to be something David Pecker can testify to, is the only way the prosecution is going to be able to get into Donald Trump's head, to get it over the net and fulfill their burden to prove that this wasn't just a run-of-the-mill payment, as Mark said, mixed motives. There's lots of reasons to kill these stories. Your reputation, your businesses, your family. But that it was something more and something very, very specific to the election.
All right, so we had Pecker today. He's going to continue tomorrow. Mark, what do you think about Stormy Daniels? Should we expect to see her take the stand?
I don't see how there's any way they don't call both Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. I think they have to. I think they led with Pecker for a reason. Pecker did not get convicted. I believe he had a deferred prosecution agreement, and what that means is that that's not technically a conviction. They may be able to cross-examine on that, but at the end of the day, that's going to be fodder for the defense, and I believe they think that he's going to be able to tell this story because he was a confidant and he doesn't carry a lot of the baggage that Michael Cohen may, or that, remember, Michael Cohen has got a tremendous amount of information that SDNY dropped on the Manhattan DA's office, if you believe what's being reported, at the last minute. And so there's probably a reason why that they were given the defense was given a 30-day continuance at least, even though they wanted more, is because they were going through what they have characterized as a treasure trove of information to cross-examine on. You don't want to start with that in front of a jury. You want somebody who's going to be a little bit more of a truth teller, a little bit more of your North Star to lead you through the theory.
You think Trump could take the stand, Mark?
Absolutely. I think he's already, I find it hard to believe that he came out already and said he was going to, because as Misty will tell you, the last thing you want to do is make that decision before the prosecution rests their case. And I've tried mightily in many, many cases to tackle my client when they want to tell their story. But I don't think you could stop him at this point. I think he's going to get up there and he's going to tell his story.
I see you shaking your head, Mulvaney. Real quick, I want to see what Mick thinks. Mick, I mean, you know the president. I mean, why are you shaking your head no?
Well, everything that Mark just said in terms of the person dynamics is right. So many defendants want to go up and tell their story because they feel like if they tell their story, it will sort of, inoculate them against any charges and prove their innocence. But most trial lawyers know, and I never practiced criminal law, but I did a lot of civil law, that that doesn't happen. You don't let a criminal defendant talk because can only typically work in one direction. The only reason a criminal defendant typically gives testimony is if his team thinks he's going to be convicted otherwise.
But he talks outside the courthouse every day. I mean, he talks all the time. He loves to talk. Are they going to really be able to stop him, you think?
But that's politics. That's not under oath in a courtroom when the possible downside is going to jail. So I fully expect him to say he's going to testify. I would be stunned if he testifies. There's no reason to. This goes back to my conversations with him about the first impeachment. Mr. President, they have nothing on you. Nothing. Everything we did was legal. As long as you just, keep quiet and don't screw this up, you will walk from this. And my guess is that's the exact same thing his team is telling him now.
What do you think, Misty? Last word to you.
All right. Here it is, Brian. Yeah. I'm going to make an early prediction. He's going to say that he wanted to testify. He was planning on testifying, but the results of today's Sandoval hearing, where the judge made a decision to allow a lot in on cross-examination, including E. Jean Carroll, the Attorney General's civil fraud results, and other issues relating to his violations of the gag order, stifled him and made it so he cannot testify. That is what I predict hearing when the time comes for whether or not he takes the stand.
And you bring up the gag order. That's going to be tomorrow morning. That's the first thing that they're going to discuss is whether or not he's already violated the gag order, whether he could face fines, eventually even jail time. So that's going to be interesting. Mick Mulvaney, Mark Garagos, thank you so much. Misty Maris, stick around. We're going to see you a little later. I want to ask you more about what you think is going on with this crazy Oklahoma-Kansas murder mystery. That update in a second. But I'll talk to you guys soon, Mick and Mark. Thank you for coming on. After court today, Trump said that the trial is not hurting him politically. This is what he said outside the courthouse.
This is a Biden witch hunt to keep me off the campaign trail. So far, it's not working because my poll numbers are higher than they've ever been because the public understands that it's a witch hunt.
All right, so was he right? How does this all play politically? I mean, that's almost just as important as the criminal element of it all, especially since the presidential election's heating up. I want to bring in NewsNation political editor and anchor of The Hill Sunday, Chris Starrewalt. Chris, thank you for being with us. You know, I was thinking today, it always seems like these legal issues have helped Trump in the past, and people get very, very passionate about it. But this just seems a little lackluster. I mean, you know, he's in this grimy New York courtroom. There's no cameras. Is this different? I mean, is this different than what, I mean, because they raid Mar-a-Lago. It's very exciting. This doesn't seem to have that element.
Yeah, it's a grind. And no offense to the good people of Manhattan, but it's kind of dingy, right? It's kind of grubby. You just heard the echo, the shouted lines in the lobby of a courthouse that probably does not see very many glamorous moments coming through the hallway. And Trump is, of course, all about glamour. He's all about the bigness. He's all about this larger-than-life persona. And this is all kind of grubby, small stuff. And I think to the point that many have made, this helped him enormously. All the criminal charges helped him enormously to win the Republican nomination. Republicans rallied around Trump. They got behind him. They said, we're not going to let Joe Biden and the Democrats, the rhetoric that you just heard from Trump there, that's good for helping Trump get to the 88, 90% of Republican support that he needed. But it doesn't work with persuadable voters, that 10 or 15% of the electorate that are persuadable. This doesn't help. And this is, especially if he were convicted, this is very dangerous for him.
I want to show you, Chris, there's the new NBC poll that's out that's interesting, kind of caught me by surprise. It shows Trump trailing Biden with RFK in the race. Look at this, Biden 39%, Trump 37%, RFK 13%. What do you make of this, Chris?
Yeah, and this goes along with another poll that we saw from Marist College that shows with RFK in the race, taking more votes, hurting both candidates, but taking more votes away from Trump. And that's something that Democrats have not thought would be the case. If you've seen the full court press from the Biden administration, or from the Biden White House and from the campaign, putting forward Kennedy siblings, marshaling environmental activists with whom Kennedy used to work to say, get out of the race, you're hurting the environment, all of that pressure. I have wondered all along whether or not a lot of sort of the fed up, independent outsider candidates who are looking for change and all of that stuff, many of whom supported Trump before, might not end up with RFK. And we're seeing a little polling here, a little indication that while he's hurting both, he's hurting Trump more.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I feel like, Chris, it's been drilled into our heads that RFK is going to take votes away from Biden. But this poll, as you just said, is sort of showing us the opposite.
Yeah, and the thing for Trump that he has to be concerned about is that right now, RFK Jr. is on the ballot in Michigan. I think that by the time we get to the end, Pennsylvania is sort of a little bit of a question, but I think by the time we get to the end, in all 7 swing states, we'll see RFK Jr. on the ballot one way or the other. And yes, I can see how Biden will be hurt more by RFK in deep blue states, right? That RFK will take more Democratic votes away in some states. But gosh, in swing states like Arizona, like Georgia, like Wisconsin, where it's going to be close and Trump is counting on winning the preponderance of the independent voters, RFK poses a real problem there. And if Trump is in for 6 weeks. 6 weeks is several geologic eras of time in a presidential election year. If Trump is spending 6 weeks in a grimy New York courtroom, in a dingy courthouse, talking about the latest events of the day like Court TV, that doesn't help him get back those voters who might be drawn to RFK Jr.
Yeah, the thought of him, I can't get it out of my mind, having to sit in that courtroom for 6 weeks, no cell phone. He can't really be working on the campaign at all, really just has to focus at night and then on the weekends. It's hard to imagine this is only day one. We've got a long way to go. Chris Starrewalt, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay, this break now, it's 4 minutes, 5 seconds. There's still a lot to come, including a shocking new twist in the case of those moms murdered in Oklahoma. Did Grandma Tiffany actually confess to the murders? What a twist that is. And was the judge in the custody dispute going to be the next victim for the 4 suspects who called themselves God's misfits? We've got all sorts of new information on this one. It's coming up next. So we turn to a bizarre twist in the case of the murdered moms in Oklahoma, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. According to new court documents, one of the 4 suspects in custody, Grandma Tiffany, she's the grandma of the kids, she's caught in a bitter custody dispute. We've talked about it. Well, she gave a recorded statement to investigators after her arrest saying she was responsible for the murders. Talk about a bombshell. Prosecutors also say that court docs show Grandma Tiffany and her co-conspirators had their eye on the judge as their next target. And here to help us break it all down, what this could mean for the suspects, we've got former FBI agent and NewsNation Law and Justice contributor, my friend Jennifer Coffendorfer, and back with me again, attorney Misty Maris. All right. Thank you both for being here. Jennifer, first of all, by the way, I found out over the weekend from Jennifer, she's actually from this part of the country. So she has a very, very intimate knowledge of this area. What did you make, Jennifer, of Grandma Tiffany's confession? Did you see that coming?
I kind of did, and let me tell you why I say this. Usually the people that seem just the most evil and the people that are in charge of kind of putting the whole scheme together, they're often the ones that actually go ahead and confess. Why? I think it's because they know this day is coming. Listen, she seems pretty dumb in how this was all planned out and all the clues that were left that led to her. But Brian, she knew she was going to get caught, and I think she knew that when she got caught, she was going to confess.
I want to read you, Misty, the part of this new court document where it basically talks about the confession. It says that she did provide a recorded statement to law enforcement indicating her responsibility for the death of the deceased. So indicating her responsibility for the death of the deceased. I had to read that like 3 times this weekend. I mean, should we read into that, Misty? Like, they didn't just say she confessed. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, it seems to say that she took responsibility. Now, without the details, we don't know exactly what she said in that confession. But there's a couple of things in the document that I think are worth pointing out. Number one, they said that she confessed in a recorded custodial interview. That means she was in custody at the time. So is this the first step in what we see in these cases where there's co-conspirators turning on each other? She's the one who's going to confess, maybe in exchange for some form of leniency down the line. Or when her defense attorney is assigned to this case, do they start to challenge whether or not that confession will ever hear the light of day in a courtroom and say that perhaps there were rights that were violated or that it's not admissible ultimately in court? That happens all the time. So I think before we know exactly what the meat is, it's hard to say what's in that recorded statement and what the impact is going to be as the case proceeds.
And every time I see these pictures of Grandma Tiffany, I think back to just seeing her in court last week. I was in Oklahoma. I was sitting like 4 feet from the woman because it's such a small courtroom. I mean, she looks so much different now. I mean, these are really flattering photos. She's much more hardened. Jennifer, what did you make of the fact that she apparently said she knew the way the judge walked home? I mean, what does that mean?
Certainly very concerning, because it makes it clear, really, that they had an alternative plan. If this plan didn't go forth, I think the judge could have been next on that hit list.
So, Misty, back to the confession, Grandma Tiffany has technically pled not guilty at this point, but now we learn about this confession on a recorded, interview with police. Why plead not guilty and then at the same time be confessing? How does that make sense?
Well, she pled not guilty. She probably hasn't had time to really get down with her lawyer and talk about what the next steps and implications of that confession are. As I said, the confession is going to be reviewed by the attorney, and there'll be a game plan developed, whether or not they're going to try and challenge it or whether or not they're going to use it as some sort of leverage to gain some favor with prosecutors. So it's really a little bit too soon to tell exactly what that means as far as how it's going to impact everything else. But there's one thing I do know, Brian. Whenever there's co-conspirators, at some point, usually they turn on each other. So is she the one to turn? I did not see that coming. I actually love Jennifer's perspective. I always thought it would be someone who had a less direct motive in the case who might come forward in this group, but seems like she's the first one to tell the story. What do you think, Jennifer? I mean, do you think she could be turning on the others? How do you think that'll play? I mean, Tad is, of course, her boyfriend, but could she, be looking out for herself at this point?
Well, what I think, Brian, is based on how well planned out this was, the cell phones and all of the deliberate planning and how they were able to plan this out. She planned this part also, this confession. And I agree with Misty, it's for a reason. We're going to find it out. I like the idea of possibly trying to gain favor. The problem is, though, she's the head. She's the head of the snake. She's the reason this all happened. So I don't know if it'll backfire. Remember, Oklahoma is a death penalty state.
Yeah, it is. And that's already come up by one of the hearings already. They've brought that up. Misty, what do you think will happen? I mean, do you think this is a death penalty case? Do you think the prosecution will go after it? It definitely could be a death penalty case. You're talking about a double murder that was obviously premeditated and planned very, very specifically. So I think there's absolutely a chance prosecutors, that's an aggravating factor right there, the fact that you have two murders. So prosecutors do have the ability to go for it. And again, that's exactly the type of leverage from a defense perspective. You want to get the death penalty off the table. How do you do that? Well, you're the one to give information that goes to that head of the snake, that goes to the mastermind, and tell it all, spill everything so that the case against that person is airtight. So the death penalty certainly is a factor. And in this case, it certainly could be applied. Yeah, and we'll see what happens because they've still yet to hire private attorneys, or they're in the process of doing that. Last week when I was there, they were still using the public defender until they could get their own attorneys. And they've got a lot of money. I mean, these folks own thousands of acres of land. Grandma Tiffany, her boyfriend Tad, I'm told, has even more money than her. So once they get these high dollar private attorneys on, who knows what twist this will take in terms of their defense. Misty Maris, Jennifer Koffendorfer, thank you both for coming on. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, this next break is just 4 minutes, 30 seconds, so don't go anywhere. Up next, pro-Palestinian protests. They have taken over Columbia University right here in New York City, other elite universities across the country, too. I landed today. I wanted to go out there and see it for myself, truly understand the situation, speak with both sides, and there they are. They're just on opposite sides of the street. We've got our exclusive footage, what I saw, what I learned. We've got a professor from the campus joining us. That's next. Palestinian supporters crossed into outright anti-Semitism with calls for violence against Jewish students. The threat was so real that all of Columbia's classes went remote today. President Biden weighed in last night saying, quote, "In recent days, we've seen harassment and calls for violence against Jews. This blatant anti-Semitism is reprehensible and dangerous, and it has absolutely no place on college campuses or anywhere in our country." So after landing in New York this morning, I decided to go straight to Columbia. I wanted to go see the protests for myself, hear from students on both sides and citizens from the community that are being affected by all of this. And surprisingly, the people least willing to speak to me were the pro-Palestinian protesters. Take a look. Hard to believe this is one of America's most prestigious universities, Columbia. You've got the pro-Palestine protesters basically taking over the entrance. They're outside. They're also on the inside, banging on the gates. And then you've got a pro-Israel group just 10 feet away over on this side. Palestine will live forever. Free Palestine!
I mean, it's been absolutely crazy. It seems like every day it's getting worse and worse. Jewish people are being harassed, being called names. Really? I know the other day people were chasing Jewish students, yelling, "Jew, Jew, F you, go back to Poland." It's truly scary to be on this campus. Go to Gaza! Go to Gaza!
I support the protests of students across college campuses who are peacefully protesting to end the genocide in Palestine. I don't support any violence against any student, any person. I think it's very important that we do not conflate a protest that says, I believe Palestinians should be alive, and I believe Palestinians are humans who deserve rights and dignity in life. I think it's very dangerous to conflate that with some type of violent rhetoric against Jewish people.
Do you feel unsafe?
I feel like it's a little bit different for me, maybe because I'm not I don't present necessarily as identifiably Jewish to some of my classmates in the sense of I'm not a boy who wears a yarmulke or don't dress religious or anything like that. And I think that gives me a certain sense of protection.
But even the fact you're saying you don't present as Jewish, it's 2024 in New York City.
Yeah.
It's kind of startling to hear you say that.
No, it's definitely upsetting.
You're a student at Columbia. Yeah. They're not letting us in. No. Do you mind going in and getting us a video so we can see what's actually happening? Okay, we'll wait for you here.
Free Palestine!
So these are all students if they were allowed in.
So a lot of them are faculties. A lot of them wearing the robes, so that's signifying we are faculty here.
How does this make you feel?
The highly distinguished Columbia University, and they are advocating for genocide. They are advocating for free Palestine, which means a genocide act against all the Israelis and Jews within the land of Israel.
Do you feel safe on campus?
No, not at all. I didn't want to be here.
So the reason he had to go in and get the video for us is because they're only allowing students and faculty on the campus. You have to have your ID, massive, massive security. So all those people you saw in his video are people affiliated with the university for the most part, which is just kind of unbelievable. So really, where is the line between free speech and hate speech? I want to bring in the host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, and Columbia professor Hagar Shamali also joins us tonight. Thank you both for being with us. Professor Shamali, I want to start with you. I was out there today, and yes, I would say, we weren't able to go on the campus. They were very serious about not letting us on. We could look through the gates. There were also protests out on the street, which is what this video is of. Most of the people, I guess you could call them peaceful, but then you look around and there are people in the crowd holding up signs with pictures of terrorists on the signs, and there are anti-Semitic chants happening out there. You've been on the campus, Professor. Do you feel safe? Do you feel unsafe?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Just because a protest is peaceful or seems peaceful because people aren't throwing things doesn't mean that they're not inciting violence, that they're not spewing hatred or anti-Semitic remarks, that they're not creating an environment that's extremely hostile and uncomfortable for everybody. Now, me personally, to answer your question, I didn't feel unsafe in the campus. I was there on Saturday. There were a lot of protests during the day and at night. I didn't feel physically threatened. I felt deeply uncomfortable. However, if I had a child, for example, who wore a yarmulke on campus, I really don't think I would be that comfortable with him on the campus right now, and that pains me to say that. For the protests outside the gate, which are largely non-students, those protests, I did not feel comfortable walking by at all. They did scare me. I would not feel safe going by them. They were spewing a lot of hatred and vitriol at Jews. They were telling them to go back to Poland. They were calling them pigs, things of this kind. It made me that protest made me feel extremely unsafe.
Cenk, the young woman, Sophie, who I interviewed today, I think what hit me the hardest was she said, well, I've been okay because I don't really look that Jewish. It's my friends who look more Jewish that are having problems. But she said to me, I can sort of pass. This is 2024, New York City. How is it appropriate that these kids feel like this, Cenk?
Yeah, well, look, I think that this coverage has been enormously unfair, to be honest. Am I concerned about it? Absolutely I am. I saw 2 or 3 videos that were definitely problematic. And one of them was the kid was wearing a Star of David. They started calling him a Zionist. We called it out on our show, The Young Turks, today. I've got a nephew that's going to a different college. He had a similar situation where he has a Star of David. He happens to be Jewish. And they were questioning him about it. I hate that stuff. I think this anti-Semitism is the dumbest thing in the world. We're all human beings, and all peace protesters should know that better than anyone else. Having said that, the overwhelming majority of protests that have been going on for 6 months, 99.9% of them have been peaceful and actually wonderful, open-hearted, open-minded people who are trying to save lives of Palestinians, innocent Palestinians that have been killed by the Israeli Defense Forces. And I thought it was ironic that Israeli student was talking about, they're for genocide. No, brother, Israel's doing the genocide right now. So,
well, but Israel's not targeting civilians. But how can you say Israel is doing the genocide? They're not targeting.
Are you serious?
Have they made mistakes? Of course, but when you think of genocide and the Holocaust, they were taking out a whole population of people. Israel's not targeting civilians. That's genocide, isn't it?
Yeah. No, so let me explain a couple of things. So first of all, there's a difference between genocide and Holocaust. Holocaust is when you try to kill everyone in the race. Genocide is when you target a particular race or religion in whole or in part. Srebrenica was a genocide. Only 6,000 Muslims were killed by the Serbs. So it's clear they are targeting Palestinians in whole or in part. It's absolutely the definition of a genocide. Second of all, the idea that Israel has made 34,000 mistakes, that they're the most incompetent military in the history of the world is, I mean, if it wasn't so tragic, it'd be hilarious. So even if you say there are some Hamas in there, and of course there were among some of the 34,000 killed, but we know for sure that at least 25,000 are women and children. Are you making the absurd claim that Israel missed 25,000 times and that they were all accidents? No, of course they're targeting the civilians. And anyone with eyes can see that. And a chant about a theoretical X, Y, or Z versus actual tens of thousands of people being killed. Just today in Rafah, Israel killed 22 more innocent people and 18 of them were children. What's worse, a chant or 18 dead children?
Well, listen, if you're...
I have to jump in on this question about genocide. I'm sorry. As a foreign policy expert, and I've worked in foreign policy literally my entire life, and I worked in national security in the U.S. government for 12 years, including in counterterrorism and including in wars. And while you have the definition of genocide right, the Israeli government, in my view and in the U.S. government's view, and I would agree with them, is not committing genocide because there is no demonstration of intent there. And intent usually shows that there is a plan and a plot to systematically wipe out or ethnically cleanse a group of people. And that is not what's happening. Now, we can debate the approach, the military strategy, and the difference in values. There's certainly a significant difference in values that you see between, for example, the U.S. military and how they approach war versus the Israeli military. And so I don't mean to say that I approve of how the Israeli military has gone about everything in Gaza, and I think they're only pushing people into the arms of the enemy. But genocide is not actually accurate from many foreign policy experts' views. And I would hazard to say, by the way, the idea that the Israeli military is not competent is they have, and what we used to say in the U.S. government was that they showed a lack of discipline. But if they weren't that competent, they certainly wouldn't have been able to deflect nearly every missile coming at them from Iran only a week ago.
Yeah, 99%. Professor Shamal, I want to go back to Colombia for a second. I just want to ask something.
But wait a minute.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Do you understand that you're making my point for me? Of course the Israeli military is not that incompetent. They're enormously competent. That's why I don't believe they made 25,000 mistakes when they killed all those women and children. So you say they have, when Hamas kills 800 some odd civilians, and then they also killed soldiers as well, those 800 civilians were all intended to be killed. But when Israel kills nearly 30,000 civilians, you say, no intent. Magically, no intent. They're just totally... They just can't hit straight. They just keep missing. That's absurd. Of course, there's a program called Where's Daddy, where they wait for a potential militant to come home, so they murder his family along with him.
Listen, we will continue the conversation. It's obviously a complicated, deep one, but back to Colombia, Professor, I was there today. There is like a tent city. There's an occupation with hundreds of these protesters who are camping out on the lawn of your campus. They've got their own constitution. I took a picture. They're not planning to leave anytime soon, and the university isn't doing anything about it. So we'll get back to it tomorrow. Professor Hagar Shamali and Cenk Uygur, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, this break right now, it's 3 minutes, 45 seconds, a lot more to come. What is it like to find love on the spectrum, and what does it mean to be on the spectrum? Probably seen this on Netflix. It's a massively popular show. The series Love on the Spectrum. It shares how the show changed. The star of the series, she's going to tell us how the show changed her life, whether she's finally found love. She's going to join us live next. Is Autism Acceptance Month, and if you've watched the Netflix series Love on the Spectrum, then you are probably one of the tens of millions of viewers who fell in love with the docuseries that chronicles the tales of dating with autism. It was a great series. Joining me now is one of the stars of the first season, 27-year-old Kaylin Partlow. Kaylin, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Huge fan of the show. I did notice there was a little bit of blowback, though, that felt like you and some of the others may not have been treated the right way, treated with enough respect. What was your experience like?
Well, you see, that's what people said, but they didn't really ask us how we felt about our experience. And I mean, I can't speak for the entirety of the cast, but personally, I had a fantastic experience. The film crew was very kind and very accommodating. They cared a lot about our sensory issues and different needs. And I mean, I thought the experience was fantastic. Yeah, and I enjoyed the show. I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it too. You didn't find love on the show, which was a little disappointing. I was rooting for you, Kaylin, but I'm curious, how's your love life now? Well, it's not great. I like to joke that the experience of Love on the Spectrum opened a lot of doors for me, but none of those doors had a boyfriend behind them. But a lot of those open doors have included public speaking engagements, social media fame, and a lot of other really, really cool opportunities. And maybe love is in the future someday. I hope so. And your story is amazing, and you've done so much good. I mean, so many of us have a family member or a close friend who is on the autism spectrum. And I think so many people don't realize that it is, in fact, a spectrum. I mean, it's not just one kind of person that has autism. Some people you may realize it, some people you may not even realize it. Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand how large the spectrum can be. You know, our media portrayals show folks like, Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, or, people are familiar with Rain Man. And that is kind of their image of autism, but they don't understand that while some folks on the spectrum can be very gifted in terms of intellectual ability, there are several folks on the spectrum who are not quite as gifted and maybe struggle in areas of language or cognition. And so the spectrum is very, very, very wide. You've got a new book coming out. Is that right, Kaylin? I do. It's called Life on the Bridge, and it's hopefully going to be available summer of 2024 on Amazon. That's awesome. Do you think there might be another, I'm selfishly asking this because I loved the show, do you think there might be another series? They have renewed officially for season 3, so that is coming soon. Awesome. Well, we look forward to it, Kaylin. We look forward to the book. You're doing amazing work. And I know everybody's really, really proud of everything that you've accomplished and getting the word out. Kaylin, thank you so much for joining us.